Thanks, Abby. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Just a quick opening remark, and that is I want to express a huge thanks to our fans for giving us what was a great step in the right direction in 2025. Our fans proved once again why they are the best in baseball. You guys packed the house night in, night out. There was incredible energy, a vibrancy, and a feeling that we took a step in the right direction in 2025. So I want to thank them. We never take that support for granted. Appreciate you guys and excited for 2026. While we fell short of our ultimate goal this year, it was definitely a step in the right direction. And lastly, I really want to thank the two guys sitting to my right, Craig Breslow and Alex Cora, and the Breslow family and the Cora family. Huge sacrifices that everybody makes each baseball season. You guys work tirelessly, so thank you very much for all your efforts, and we're all really excited about the road ahead. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brez, or we'll open it up for questions. Great.
I can share a few words here, just echoing Sam's sentiment. Thank you to the fans. Fenway Park was electric this season. It was what we had always envisioned when we thought about a winning team and how uncomfortable it could be for an opponent to come here and play. We were above 500 at home for the first time in a few years, and that's really, really meaningful and really, really significant. And we're sitting here the first week in October, which means we didn't accomplish what we set out to accomplish. We talked all offseason and during the season about building a roster that was capable of a deep postseason run, and we fell short of that, and I don't think there's any running from it or any hiding from it. But a few things can be true at the same time, and that shouldn't diminish what the players did, what the staff did, and at every challenge there was an overcoming of adversity. There are a number of things that we can point to as reasons for optimism, from the development of some of our young position players, the emergence of pitching development pipeline that we think can contribute at the major league level, and we saw has contributed at the major league level. A number of the offseason acquisitions playing critical roles in contributing wins during the course of the season, and ultimately getting back to the postseason, which is the standard that we have talked about and the one by which we should be measured. So I think it's important to balance both of those things. And with that, I'll open this up for questions.
Yeah, I guess, Craig, first, what do you think you have to do to kind of take it a step further than this?
Yeah, I think there are a few things that we can point to. The most significant of which I think is to remind ourselves that there's no guarantee that we just pick up where we left off at the end of 2025, right? Just kind of expecting everyone to take a step forward, I think could allow us to be complacent or to fall flat. And so, we'll take stock of the roster, and we'll think about opportunities to improve that could come through multiple paths. I think we can talk about the different elements of the game and say that we have to examine our defense, and we led the league in errors, and that's not good enough. At the same time, I think our outfield defense was the best in baseball. On the whole, our offensive unit was good by almost all metrics. We were a top 10 team in scoring runs, in getting on base, in slugging, but we didn't execute consistently with runners in scoring position, right? We struck out with runners in scoring position, and that's another thing that we can examine. But right now, I think we'll kind of zoom out a little bit and take stock of where we are, and we'll be open to all possible pathways to improving the team.
Craig, is your intention with the coaching staff to bring back
last
year?
Alex and I are having conversations. There's nothing to announce right now outside of our coaching staff did a very good job this year. Like I said, there were a number of challenges that they faced, and you could not question the commitment, the work ethic, the relationship that they have with the players.
Craig, is there a danger to, given the format now, overreacting to
a very small sample size of 3 games in determining what you need to do and why you fell short? And how much do you factor that into your off-season evaluation and determining what has to be done?
I think it's a factor for sure. I think the worst time to make a decision is kind of in the immediate aftermath of some emotional outcome, and getting knocked out of the playoffs is certainly that, which is why I think it's important to take a breath and kind of give ourselves a little bit of distance. At the same time, some of the opportunities to improve that I just pointed out, I think those were evident for a while. I don't think that those are reactions to a small sample, but we do have to balance that.
Greg, last year you said you wanted to prioritize a top-end pitcher deadline. You said that you wanted to prioritize. Do you know what you want to prioritize going into off-season right now?
Well, we want to prioritize improving the team, and I think there are going to be a few paths to doing that. I think you can rewind a year and say that we improved the team in the off season, and we did that through a significant trade. That utilized a deep farm system, and I think that's a credit to the scouting and player development group here to bring in Garrett. We were active in free agency and making a significant signing and bringing in Alex Bregman and Aroldis Chapman. We were also active in some kind of more under the radar type transactions, bringing in Narvi. And you look at the team, the roster this year, and Romy Gonzalez was a significant contributor who was available via waiver claim, and we saw some of our young players kind of matriculate to the big leagues from internal scouting and development success. So I think there's a number of ways that we can improve the club. I think we demonstrated a willingness to try to attack all of those, and anticipate that we will do so again.
For Craig and Alex, how do you think your major league roster right now stacks up to the teams that are still playing in terms of equal? Do you feel like there's a gap, and how much did attrition play a role by the end?
Yeah, I can take the first stab. I think when you look at the composition of teams that are still in the postseason, I think they've got strong starting rotations, which we had for most of the season. Certainly injuries played a role and took a toll on us, but we were able to lean into some of that development pipeline that we've talked about, and we're very intentional in building, and saw guys like Connolly and Peyton and Kyle Harrison and Hunter Dobbins and others step in and contribute. I think it would be fair to look at some of those other teams and say that they hit the ball out of the park a little bit more than we do, and while scoring runs this is kind of a zero-sum game, right? And it doesn't really matter how you score, but in the postseason, a lot of runs come via the home run because the pitching is so dominant. So I think that's a consideration. And then, don't want to speak for Alex here, but I would just say when you have a chance to convert outs, especially in the postseason, that's precious, and we have to make sure that we convert on them.
For me, it's hard to compare right now, honestly. The roster that we had at the end, it wasn't the roster we had early in the season or during the season, so it's actually very hard for me to compare.
Greg, when you talk about home runs, how do you fix that? Does that need to be done externally, or is there internal options like Tristan and stuff that come back?
Yeah, I think, like I said, in answering other questions about improving the roster, we'll be open to all of those things. We faced some significant injuries during the course of the season, and to guys that have shown that they can hit the ball out of the ballpark, whether that was in the big leagues or internally. And so I think we'll actively look to improve the roster. That means we have to be willing to look in free agency, trade, and internally.
So is Tristan your first baseman, or are you looking to add or upgrade that area?
Yeah, I don't think it makes a ton of sense on October 6th to say someone is or isn't, our first baseman. We'll see how things play out. Unfortunately, Tristan has missed a significant amount of time over the last 2 years. We've also seen what he's capable of doing when he's healthy.
As far as Tristan goes, how is he doing in his recovery, and is he on pace to be available at the start of next season?
He's doing really well. He's in here every day rehabbing, just kind of watching the progress from the initial surgery to where he is now. He's moving around really well, load bearing, squatting. So we anticipate a full recovery. But I'm hesitant to put a timeline on that just because, with any of these injuries, you want to make sure that you're not kind of getting too far out in front of them.
Do you expect to approach Bregman and Boris in in the next month before free agency and before the opt-out decision about a new contract?
You know, I think best to keep those conversations internal. Obviously, Alex has the right, you know, kind of as structured in his contract to opt out, and he's going to do what's best for, you know, for his family. At the same time, I will not miss an opportunity to talk about his contributions on the field, in the clubhouse, to the coaching staff, to the front office. You know, every conversation we've had, I learned something. I think that impact and influence has rubbed off on his teammates, and by all accounts, he's loved his time in Boston as well.
To that end, then, what is the significance to the 2026 Red Sox to keeping him?
You know, I mean, I think we'll let that play out, but the significance would be, you know, having, you know, a great player, a proven winner, a strong defender, someone who fits this park really well on our roster.
When you look at his decision and Trevor's decision, have they given you any indication on which way they're leaning at this point?
I have not had, you know, the chance to draw conclusions about those things. Those are obviously decisions for them to make. You know, and at this time, I think everyone will say that they were focused on trying to, you know, do everything we could to advance in the postseason.
Alex's stats, pre-injury, post-injury, kind of dramatically different. You know, how do you kind of quantify that going into the offseason, trying to figure out kind of what he is?
Yeah, look, I think Alex did everything he could to get back on the field as soon as possible, including playing before he was 100%. And that deserves a ton of appreciation because he knew what was at stake and he knew his role on the team. And we were a better team with, you know, Alex at 80% of his sprint speed, you know, than we are without him at all. You know, did that have an impact on his performance? Like, probably a better question for Alex, but, you know, our medical staff, Alex and AC here, like had a great plan to keep him on the field as much as we possibly could, and you know, so we were able to execute on that successfully.
Greg, you talked about the defense and needing to convert out more frequently. How do you plan to go about improving that? Is that something Marcelo coming back and adding into the mix? Do you feel like you need to add from the outside to strengthen that group? What do you think the path to that is?
Yeah, I think we'll keep all options on the table. You know, the overarching goal here is to improve the team, and if that happens, you know, via external additions, great. If it's an internal player taking a step forward, great. You know, I think what some of our defensive lapses have done is cause us to take a look internally about around the way that we are developing players, the focus, you know, on defense in the minor leagues, and we've identified some opportunities to maybe change some of the methods and focus on defensive conversion to a greater extent. And I think we're going to see the rewards of that.
Sam, you've been here for this whole sort of sustainability plan. You said this was a step in the right direction. Do you feel like this is now a shift in this plan where you guys are at a point where you can be a little more aggressive or have a different level of aggressiveness in terms of maximizing the major league product and the success of that?
Yeah, it felt like a great step forward in that regard, Chris, and we're gonna keep building this thing, and hopefully we take the next step next year.
Greg, how does Giolito's injury and what's going on, you know, cloud his future? Obviously, mutual option, qualifying offer, that type of stuff. How much is this a factor when you guys look at potentially bringing him back?
Yeah, I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about that. Obviously, we were consumed with trying to perform as well as we possibly could in the postseason, and then, you know, given the news of Lucas's injury, really just, you know, kind of transition to doing everything that we could to help him get healthy. You know, this is a guy that obviously had a significant injury last year, worked really hard to get back on the field, and you know, at times, you know, alongside Garrett and Bea was carrying the rotation, right? And so, you know, that's kind of what our focus is right now, and you know, we'll make decisions in the future.
Are there any other medical procedures now the season's over?
Narvi is going to have his meniscus cleaned up this week. Other than that, you know, guys are good heading into the offseason.
What's the extent of that? Was it a torn? I mean, what was wrong with the meniscus, and how long was he playing like that?
Yeah, the exact timeline I'm not quite sure. There were a couple times during the course of the season where it flared up. One of them pretty obviously. to where he missed a little bit of time, but like, he deserves a ton of credit for his willingness to play through this, potentially even at a time when others would have maybe bowed out. Because he felt that attached to trying to help the group. But this should be a pretty straightforward procedure and don't anticipate any issues.
Would that be full go normal player come spring training after the meniscus cleanup?
That's the expectation, but like probably best to wait till the procedure's done.
Greg, you mentioned the pitching pipeline and the improvements that you guys have made. As you look at the pitching staff for next season, can you rely on that to supplement the guys that you have, or do you think you would need to bring somebody in, via trade or free agency to improve that, especially the rotation?
Yeah, no one will sit in this seat and say that there's enough pitching in the organization. I think we saw that in the second half, and we could list out the pitchers that were on the IL, and it just means that depth is so critically important. So, like I said, when we talk about pursuing opportunities to improve the team, bringing in pitching is certainly one of them.
How do you view Sandoval for next year? Does he have a clear role?
He was brought in because of his track record of success as a starting pitcher, but again, I think probably premature to start identifying roles, here in October.
You mentioned obviously the big trade for Crochet last winter and using the prospect pipeline to do that. Do you feel like you still have enough of a pool of prospects to trade from to pull off another major trade like that this winter, or where do you feel like the organization stands in that sense?
Yeah, I think we feel good about the farm system, the depth that we have, the young talent. Also, if you were to look at maybe some of the public rankings, it's probably misleading a bit because a lot of our really young talent is in the big leagues and contributed this season. And that's a really good place to be as well, but have a ton of confidence in the scouting and player development departments to continue to replenish. And so, as Sam was asked that question about sustainability, I don't think this is an either or outcome. The idea is to have a consistent winner in the major leagues while also maintaining a healthy farm system.
You said at the trade deadline you were not willing to move players off the big league roster. How do you feel about doing so now, particularly in regards to your surplus in the outfield?
It's interesting because the surplus in the outfield was also, an area where we got really thin in the outfield, right? And so you have to think about that anytime you feel comfortable about the surplus or depth that you have. Without getting into specifics, everything has to be on the table as we think about improving the team in 2026.
You were comfortable going to the trade deadline, thinking about the last 2 months of the season of having those 4 outfielders, which thinned, yes, but you were comfortable rotating them and making that work. Could you make that work for a full season?
I'm not the person that has to, manage it. I would argue that having 4 outfielders capable of, taking 550 at-bats is a great place to be and have a ton of confidence in Alex's ability to manage the people and the personalities. But again, we have to think about what is best for the organization, what's best for building a winner in 2026.
Alex, what's your view of that? For the 4 outfielders for 3 spots?
If I have 4, I can manage them. No, you find ways, and at the end of the day, the deeper the better, to be honest with you. And that's something that we get tested at the end of the season. We cannot control injuries, we cannot control slumps, right? So as far as like managing them, yeah, you can do it.
Alex, at the end of the year, you mentioned this was fun for you. And was it because you were able to get competitive baseball, or was it the group, or a combination?
The group, the challenges, is something that throughout the years we were shooting for this, and we got it, and disappointed because of the results, right? It's not cool to watch games yesterday, right? That's not what I wanted. But as far as like the overall season, for me, I had a blast. We really enjoyed it. I think this place made it special. To come here every single day and win here and have the energy that we had throughout the season, that was special.
Fred, what's your plan for DH 2016?
Yeah, again, I'm going to be reluctant to make commitments about rosters or roles just because I think we've got work to do ahead of us to improve the team. I've talked about how I think it's important and it's beneficial to give Alex the flexibility to be able to write the lineup and utilize players as we see best, and to give as much versatility and flexibility as we can.
For Sam and Craig, how much does the financial room created by the Raffi trade change what you can do this offseason compared to what you could do if he was on the roster?
Yeah, I think about this from a baseball perspective, and that is trying to build this kind of athletic, dynamic team, and giving ourselves and the baseball operation as much flexibility as we possibly can to do that. I think what I have seen as a player and what I've seen over the last couple of years is that with this ownership group, when there is a chance to build a winner and a team that can contend for the postseason, like, resources aren't a problem. And I think we've talked a lot about how this window of contention is upon us.
I would just add that what was rewarding to see this year was these two guys, again, to my right, acting with urgency, starting with our trip to Dallas and then all the way through. We didn't get there where we wanted to go. We all know that, but we acted with urgency and certainty and aggression, and we plan to continue to do that as we go forward. So we'll see where that takes us when we get to Orlando or wherever the heck we're going.
Question for Craig and Alex. Craig mentioned the overall bottom line offensive numbers were solid. The risk numbers left something to be desired. What is the best way to improve that?
I think from my end, like I always said, as long as the line is moving, you're gonna be okay, and yeah, we struck out a lot in those situations. We can talk about hitting the ball out of the ballpark, but now we're talking about situational hitting. So which one it is, right? So is it one or the other? I think it's both, and you have to work as a group, as a unit, to keep getting better. Cash in is very important. I always believe in that, infield back, man at third, take your ground ball to second, and you score, and that's not a single. That's an 0 for 1 based on RBI. So we'll keep talking about situational hitting while always talking about driving the ball, So the good teams, they do both, You saw it yesterday with Detroit, first and second, 2 strikes, double down the line, they scored 2, and then extra base hit, single, Seattle gets the lead. So, it's not like linear. It's not only home runs, You have to be a well-balanced offense. We saw it yesterday with Toronto. They put the ball in play. They don't hit the ball hard, but now they hit homers. So which one it is, So we'll work hard in the offseason to get to the point that we feel comfortable with the group. We get to spring training. We'll talk about putting the ball in play and get the line moving, and then 162 happens.
Right. I know that you talked about having 4 outfielders, but how important is for Whittier to be better against lefties or be able to hit against lefties?
Yeah, I think Willier's a great player, and our lineup was not the same without him. He's a real threat to hit the ball out of the park. He plays elite defense, runs the bases really well, and it's easy to look past the fact that he and Sedan and they're still young players that are getting better in the big leagues. And so, of course, we'll do everything we can to help him, with hitting more success versus left. But we've got a pretty good idea of how good he is. It's kind of Alex's role is to make sure that he's in situations where he can thrive, and I think those situations will broaden over time.
You talked about the sort of overcrowded or full outfield picture that you have with 4 for 3 spots. That would seem to indicate that your Sheeta's future continues to be mostly at DH. Given that most teams expect some slug from that and run production, he didn't give you much of that. He was kind of a singles hitter. Does that need to change going forward in terms of how you envision him and utilize him?
Well, I would start by saying he also played in the field some, and he was good. So I don't want to shortchange the contributions he could make by playing the outfield. And then beyond that, it would be impossible to ignore the contributions that he made, especially in September. Where just consistently having disciplined at bats, seeing pitches, not chasing balls out of the zone, and he had countless big hits for us, including the biggest hit in Game 1 of the postseason. And I think he's capable of driving the ball out of the park. He's also capable of, kind of taking what a pitcher gives him and putting together a quality at bat. And so, again, like, this isn't to say that in one particular position we have to get slug over, on base or vice versa. I think it's to say that, we need to score runs, and there are a number of different ways to do that.
Greg, a lot went on this year, obviously, from the Devers stuff at spring training. How much did you learn from this year about the job that you have as chief baseball officer? How would you say you improved during the year and improve going forward?
I learned a lot. Every time there's a decision to be made, there's also an opportunity to learn about each other, to learn about the rest of the baseball operation group, to learn about myself. And so I'm constantly kind of reliving those decisions to make sure that, not necessarily that the outcome was right. That can be really difficult to predict, but that we had a good kind of decision-making process, that we had the information that was necessary to make the best decisions possible. And I learned a lot about the value of building relationships and having clear communication and spending time with the coaching staff and spending time with the players and certainly with Alex, and of having honest conversations, uncomfortable as they may be at times. So I think that the short answer there is I've learned a ton.
Working off that, how do you look back at the deadline that you guys had now that the season's over?
Yeah, it's a very similar answer to the one that I just gave, which is to say, we're sitting here in October not having accomplished what we set out to accomplish. So I think it would be irresponsible not to go back and think about all of the decisions that were made leading up to today. And that goes back to acquisitions we made in the offseason, roster transactions throughout the year, and certainly the trade deadline. We went into the deadline with a few goals, and it kind of became apparent that some of those weren't going to be able to be achieved, and we pivoted. And sometimes those work out, sometimes they don't. But I think we had a good process, we had good information, and our hope is we're going to find ourselves, 8 months from now or whatever it is, in late July with a really good team that we believe in, that we're looking to bolster all over again.
Craig, you said this window of contention is upon us. How does that change your approach, if at all? You mentioned before on sustainability, you can't do both, but is there a shift of the pendulum one way or the other? Because I think for a lot of fans who've been waiting for this window of contention for a while, to say the approach would just be the same would be a little counterintuitive to them from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there are obviously the two extremes. One is where you're thinking only about the future and you're making decisions with the long term in mind. The other is you're going kind of all in on the season that's in front of you. And I think what we try to do as a baseball operation is to consistently make disciplined decisions that improve both. And it's really hard, but it can be done. And often that involves trading prospects. But I think making sure that you're kind of giving enough attention and focus to replenishing that internal talent pipeline, while also recognizing just how precious winning seasons are, and not kind of punting or assuming that, hey, we'll take another step forward in 2026. So if we just maintain the status quo, we're going to be better, because that is absolutely not guaranteed.
You look at what happened and feel like it was what happened this year. It's sustainable. I mean, you guys got a lot of contributions from guys that, again, maybe on the outside you wouldn't have expected. Romy Gonzalez, Abraham Toro was great for you guys for a little while when Costas was out. Nathaniel Lowe, DFA comes and helps you towards the end of the season. Nate Eaton, those guys. When you look at the way Alex did such a great job of mixing and matching, and you got contributions maybe from places, at least on the outside, people didn't expect. Do you feel like that's sustainable for 2026?
It's getting harder and harder, because we're competing with 29 other teams who are super competitive and smart and are also trying to leverage competitive advantages. But I think a lot of the credit for those types of moves, it starts with our scouting departments, amateur and pro, and identifying guys like Romy and Nadine and Abraham Toro and others, and then the coaching staff who I think gets them to take a step forward, and then Alex in finding the right opportunities to give them some runway and being able to get the most out of those guys.
Again, Alex, just where do you guys stand with where Christian Campbell was the last few months? And I know you talked about not wanting to put roles in October, but is this someone that with a better camp in the spring, is that someone that's also maybe having more outfield conversations or sometime early next season?
Yeah, again, stopping short of role. I think Christian learned a lot about himself. We learned a lot about him. He's a tireless worker, and we saw that from from spring training through his time in the big leagues when he was the AL Rookie of the Month to when he was struggling and sent down. I've got a ton of confidence both in the work he's going to commit to this offseason and what he's going to mean for this organization, but I don't think it makes a ton of sense to try to pin him to a role outside of saying he's going to kind of feel the support of the entire organization, and we know what he's capable of.
Right, do you plan on identifying a GM before GM meetings?
I think I've been so consumed with the postseason, and I know that I had made some comments that I feel like it could be a good time to kind of kick off that search. I'm not sure exactly what a timeline might be. Obviously, we had a significant loss in Paul leaving to go to Washington, and kind of figuring out the best structure for the front office will be a priority, but exactly what those roles look like, I'm not sure yet.
Given the holes or spots on the roster that exist or might exist, do you expect this, transactionally speaking, to be another significant, busy, and weighty off-season for you guys?
I think we approach each off-season pretty similarly in terms of trying to kind of improve our outlook. Maybe the thing that changes is just how far into the future we're kind of declaring that outlook, and we're certainly pulling, prioritizing wins forward. We're going to pursue every opportunity to improve the team. Exactly what that means in terms of magnitude of transactions or number of transactions, I can't really speak to yet.
Do you think you need a number 2 starter behind Crochet?
I think we want to build the best rotation we possibly can, and at times through the year you could say Bayo pitched like a number 2 because he did, or Lucas pitched like a number 2 because he did, or Connolly Early pitched like a number 2 because he did. But I'll go back to the question about do you rely on the pitching that you have in-house, or do you seek to try and improve it? I think the answer is you always look to improve and get as much pitching depth as you possibly can.
And given the uncertainty at first base and DH, the uncertainty there moving forward, as well as the production there this past season, do you need a higher ceiling there from whomever? More production?
Right. Well, I think would we look for more production out of first base, more production out of second base? I think the answer is of course. Exactly what that looks like, we're going to figure out through the course of the offseason.
Alex, from your seat, how close do you think this team is to winning the pennant, being in the World Series?
We're one out away from being tied in the ninth, right? When you get to October, you never know what's going to happen. I think we took the steps in the right direction last offseason, during the season, not only as far as like what the front office did, but what we did on the field. It was a much better team than the last few years. The thing that excites me is the pitching, going into the offseason. And, we had some guys last year that we thought they were going to be better, Tanner, Cutter, right? They were banged up, but what we have in player development now is real, and going into the offseason last year, we all talk about position players, and I was like, okay, cool, that's great, but we have some good position players here. Now we're talking about, a deeper pitching staff, which is very important. We took our hits throughout the season, and we still have very talented pitchers towards the end. The bullpen is in a much better place going into the offseason than last year, so to answer the question, I truly believe we're going to be playing for the same thing next year. It's to win the ALEs and have a deep run in October and hopefully win the World Series.
Alex, what do you hope the young players take away from being in the playoffs?
Well, there were some young players with us and others in Fort Myers, and everything that I'm hearing is we're going to work hard to go deeper. It was a challenge, not only in the playoffs. If you think about the last 2 weeks, with everything that was going on in the American League, it got tough. It got tough. We clinched in game 159, right? And the last 2 weeks, going to Toronto, going into Tampa, it was a great learning experience for that group. But also the ones that were here, Marcelo, Roman, Fitz, just watching, Casas in the dugout, just see the whole atmosphere, what was going on. I thought it was a great learning experience and hopefully one that they're going to take into the offseason and, push to get better and be part of this.
Alex, asked Craig about the defense, but how do you view the defense? And obviously the past few years it's been a tough situation, but on the big league side, what do you feel like you
Well,
guys
we
need
made
to-
errors, but we were a lot better. You ask around the industry, and we were one of the best defensive teams in the big leagues. There were a lot of things that we didn't do early in the season that we got better, especially in the outfield group. We dropped a few balls. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about October, the playoff, and we didn't play good defense there. But overall, it's a good defensive unit. I think, Trevor, although he slumped at the end, he was solid. Alex, when he played, was great. Toro, when he played first, he was amazing. Narvi was a lot better. I think as far as like defensive run saves, and that's what people talk about, we have one of the best in the big leagues.
Craig, the Jaron Duran club option, where does the team stand with that right now?
Yeah, not ready to speak, specifically about players or contract situations, but we've seen what Jaron means to this team, and we're glad he wears a Red Sox uniform.
Sam, where does things stand with the Fenway Coors project? And are things approaching a point where fans can expect to see construction around the neighborhood in the next year?
Well, we took the first step with the construction and opening of the Fenway Music Hall. That was sort of the anchor of the project. As it relates to the other ancillary development, things are on hold like a lot of projects, given the interest rate environment, given construction costs. But we're fully entitled, thanks to the city of Boston and their planning department. So as soon as market conditions improve for office space and the demand for hotels and more residential, we're ready to go.
Alex, just curious, from your standpoint, you did a lot of mixing and matching this year. As a manager, would you rather have that flexibility to mix and match and platoon, or would you rather say, this is my guy at this position, this is the second baseman, this is the first baseman, you plug him in pretty much every day? Which do you prefer as the manager?
One of the best teams in the history of the game, on the Red Sox history, platoon in 2018. We platooned behind the plate, we platooned at first, at second, at third. We had 3 studs in the outfield, but we've been doing this for a while, so I don't mind that.
Alex, if you think about how that lineup was built, the year before you got here, there was a lot to ask of those young hitters in the lineup, and then you go out and get some pretty good right-handed power. Is that kind of where you view this lineup next year, or do you think that for as young as the lineup's still going to be, maybe having more time for Roman and Tristan to be out there, that's enough to elevate the lineup?
We're going to look for opportunities to get better, not only outside the organization, but here, how we can improve our players, and going into the season, we felt offensively we had a good unit. Overall, if you see the season, it was a good one. I think it was more consistent than the previous 2. I felt like the previous 2 years, we were really up and down. This year, it didn't feel that way. We went from a team that was going to hit homers, and we had the injury and the trade, to a team that was more contact-driven. Then all of a sudden, we were banged up a little bit, and then we ended up striking out a lot. But I really believe we were more consistent than the last 2 years.
Alex, how much impressive was Connelly, considering that he was called up at the end of the season?
Bro, you know what? After game 3, I saw that kid in the dugout, and I have no doubt that this guy is going to contribute in the future. We talked a little bit after the game. The goal is to get stronger and keep getting better. He had a taste of what it is to pitch in October and in Yankee Stadium in a winter winner go home game, right? So what better experience we want for a young kid to have, right? So moving forward, he's going to be better, and I'm excited about his future.
Craig, you could make a statement that a year ago you said we need an ace. You agreed, and you got an ace. You could, and this year, Alex has talked about the pitching. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have got to where you almost got. Could even be playing now because of the pitching. Can you say that though? Now, if going another round, going 2 rounds, seeing the teams that are there at the top, that truly you do need that second ace kind of guy, and that though you might have it here, you might not.
I think what I would say is we need to figure out ways to improve the team, and that could take a number of different shapes. Every team gets better if you can bring in a starter or develop a starting pitcher that could pitch at Garrett Crochet's level, right? Like there's no running from that, and we'll be as aggressive as we can in trying to chase that down, while also ensuring that we're doing everything we can to develop our players internally.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.